Republicans on the House Oversight Committee are requesting more information about Hunter Biden and his associates. Ranking member James Comer sent letters to more than a dozen banks, financial institutions, and the Department of Treasury for financial information into the president's son's business dealings. The letter states the investigation is to, quote, determine whether these activities compromise U.S. national security and President Biden's ability to lead with impartiality. The White House has declined to comment on a potential probe by the committee. President Biden has previously said he was not involved in the business dealings of his son or brother, James Biden. No evidence has been found to suggest otherwise. Joining us now is CBS News senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge. Catherine, always such a pleasure to talk to you. So tell us, what are Republicans on the House Oversight Committee trying to accomplish by requesting all of these records?
Well, Lana, we were able to obtain more than a dozen letters that went to the banks as well as the Treasury. And in the simplest terms, the ranking member of the House Government Oversight Committee is trying to lay the groundwork for a possible investigation if the House flips and he takes over the chairmanship of that committee. He said specifically he wanted to have the records at his disposal because he wants to drill down on this alleged commingling of funds between Hunter Biden and his father before he became president, Lana.
Catherine, as I understand it, at the heart of these requests is something called a suspicious activity report.
Correct.
Explain to us what that is.
Well, it's also known by the acronym SARS, and it breaks down into three categories. The first category is called velocity, and what that means is how quickly is money coming into an account and then exiting the account. So, for example, a bank account is established, $5 million comes in, and then within 24 hours, $5 million is out. So that's very quick velocity, and that could lead to a red flag or a suspicious activity report. The second is the size of the transaction. So are these large numbers? Are they round numbers? Because typically business transactions are 27,485, not just 50,000 once a month for several months. And then finally, they have something called layering. Layering is how many accounts a deposit or a wire transfer goes through before it reaches its ultimate destination. And the reason that's of interest to the banks is that it can be an effort to obscure the actual parties who are involved in the transaction. So a SARS can fall into all of those categories, and it's a way for the banks to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to have further review of this transaction. And based on our reporting here at CBS News, we saw evidence of more than 150 activities that were flagged for further review involving the Biden family accounts.
Catherine, what have you learned also about the request to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen?
Well, this comes down to a very simple idea. The House Republicans are saying that they're just not getting the access to these suspicious activity reports that they used to get. They argue that they could get copies of these reports in their records and hold them on Capitol Hill. And they're saying now they're sort of more restricted. They have to go to these designated reading rooms. But when we contacted the Treasury Department, they said that they're still providing records in a way that allows for robust oversight, and that there hasn't been a single instance when they've been asked by Congress for this kind of reporting, and it has not been provided.
Well, we're also hearing that there could be movement from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware about their investigation into Hunter Biden. Might we hear about charges soon? And how would that potentially impact the Oversight Committee's probe?
Well, there's certainly been an acceleration of activity involving the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware. And based on our reporting here at CBS News, they've been looking at fundamentally three issues. One is a tax fraud. The other is money laundering. And then the third is something called FARA, which is the Foreign Agents Registration Act. It's something that requires American citizens to register when they're lobbying on behalf of a foreign government. Putting that to one side, what Congressman Comer has told CBS News is that regardless of what happens with the U.S. attorney, whether there's an indictment or whether a plea agreement is reached or whether no charges are brought, if he takes over the chairmanship, he says he still plans to investigate. Now, for some context and balance, what we heard from the White House Chief of Staff in early April, about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, he was very specific that President Biden believes that his family did the right thing. And he went also on to say that the actions of James Biden, his brother, and Hunter Biden, these are the actions of private individuals, and they are private matters. But at the end of the day, he does not feel that there has been any wrongdoing, Lana.
All right. Catherine Herridge, thank you.
You're welcome.